Part 2, Chapter 1 of To Let. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Eva Harnick, Ponte Vedra, Florida. The Forsyte Saga, Volume 3, To Let, by John Galsworthy. Part 2, Chapter number 1, Mother and Son. To say that John Forsyte accompanied his mother to Spain unwillingly would scarcely have been adequate. He went as a well-natured dog goes for a walk with its mistress, leaving a choice mutton bone on the lawn. He went looking back at it. Forsytes, deprived of their mutton bones, are wont to sulk. But John had little sulkiness in his composition. He adored his mother, and it was his first travel. Spain had become Italy by his simply saying, "I would rather go to Spain, Mum. You have been to Italy so many times. I would like it new to both of us." The fellow was subtle besides being naive. He never forgot that he was going to shorten the proposed 2 months into 6 weeks, and must therefore show no sign of wishing to do so. For one with so enticing a mutton bone and so fixed an idea, he made a good enough travelling companion, indifferent to where or when he arrived, superior to food, and thoroughly appreciative of a country strange to the most travelled Englishman. Fleur's wisdom in refusing to write to him was profound, for he reached each new place entirely without hope or fever, and could concentrate immediate attention on the donkeys and tumbling bells, the priest, patios, beggars, children, crowing cocks, sombreros, cactus hedges, old high white villages, goats, olive trees, greening plains, singing birds in tiny cages, water cellars, sunsets, melons, mules, great churches, pictures, and swimming grey-brown mountains of a fascinating land. It was already hot, and they enjoyed an absence of their compatriots. John, who so far as he knew had no blood in him which was not English, was often innately unhappy in the presence of his own countrymen. He felt they had no nonsense about them, and took a more practical view of things than himself. He confided to his mother that he must be an unsociable beast. It was jolly to be away from everybody who could talk about the things people did talk about. To which Irene had replied simply, "Yes, John, I know." In this isolation he had unparalleled opportunities of appreciating what few sons can apprehend, the whole-heartedness of a mother's love. Knowledge of something kept from her made him no doubt unduly sensitive, and the southern people stimulated his admiration for her type of beauty, which he had been accustomed to hear called Spanish, but which he now perceived to be no such thing. Her beauty was neither English, French, Spanish, nor Italian. It was special. He appreciated too, as never before, his mother's subtlety of instinct. He could not tell, for instance, whether she had noticed his absorption in that Goya picture, La Vendimia, or whether she knew that he had slipped back there after lunch and again next morning to stand before it full half an hour, a second and third time. It was not Fleur, of course, but like enough to give him heartache, so dear to lovers, remembering her standing at the foot of his bed with her hand held above her head. To keep a postcard reproduction of this picture in his pocket and slip it out to look at became for John one of those bad habits which soon or late disclose themselves to eyes sharpened by love, fear, or jealousy. And his mother's were sharpened by all three. In Granada he was fairly caught, sitting on a sun-warmed stone bench in a little battlemented garden on the Alhambra hill, whence he ought to have been looking at the view. His mother, he had thought, was examining the potted stalks between the polled acacias, when her voice said, "Is that your favorite Goya, John?" He checked too late, a movement such as he might have made at school to conceal some surreptitious document, and answered yes. "It certainly is most charming, but I think I prefer the quitasol. Your father would go crazy about Goya. I don't believe he saw them when he was in Spain in '92. In '92, 9 years before he had been born! What had been the previous existences of his father and his mother? If they had a right to share in his future, surely he had a right to share in their pasts. He looked up at her, but something in her face, a look of life hard lived, the mysterious impress of emotions, experience, and suffering seemed, with its incalculable depths, its purchased sanctity, to make curiosity impertinent. His mother must have had a wonderfully interesting life. She was so beautiful, and so... but he could not frame what he felt about her. He got up and stood gazing down at the town, at the plain all green with crops, and the ring of mountains glamorous in sinking sunlight. Her life was like the past of this old Moorish city, full, deep, remote. His own life, as yet such a baby of a thing, hopelessly ignorant and innocent. They said that in those mountains to the west, which rose sheer from the blue-green plain as if out of a sea, Phoenicians had dwelt, a dark, strange, secret race above the land. His mother's life was as unknown to him, as secret, as that Phoenician past was to the town down there, whose cocks crowed and whose children played and clamoured so gaily, day in, day out. He felt aggrieved that she should know all about him, and he nothing about her, except that she loved him and his father, and was beautiful. His callow ignorance, he had not even had the advantage of the war, like nearly everybody else, made him small in his own eyes. That night, from the balcony of his bedroom, he gazed down on the roof of the town as if inlaid with honeycomb of jet, ivory, and gold, and, long after, he lay awake, listening to the cry of the sentry as the hour struck, and forming in his head these lines: "Voice in the night crying, down in the old sleeping Spanish city darkened under her white stars. What says the voice, its clear lingering anguish? Just the watchman telling his dateless tale of safety? Just the roadman flinging to the moon his song? No, this one deprived, whose lover's heart is weeping, just his cry, how long?" The word deprived seemed to him cold and unsatisfactory, but bereaved was too final, and no other word of 2 syllables, short, long, came to him which would enable him to keep "whose lover's heart is weeping." It was past 2 by the time he had finished it, and past 3 before he went to sleep, having said it over to himself at least 24 times. Next day he wrote